Swami Manamurti Saraswati, and tonight we're going to be introducing week 3 of the QEEU 12-week lecture series, and the title for tonight's lecture is on Homo Lumina. Very interesting subject. But before we get started tonight, I've got a few announcements to make. So this live stream will be actually in three sections, three sections. So we're going to start with some announcements. So before we get started on tonight's teachings of Homo Lumina, I want to share a few important updates. Today I formally activated my ORCID identity. That's the Global Research ID, marking the beginning of QEEU's academic presence in the world. From April to July 1, 1st of April till July 1, that's 3 months, I'm entering a focused institutional phase with grant applications, archival uploads, and preparing the next stage of the canon. So I'll be quieter on Facebook during this high-level chapter. Our work now has a permanent scholarly home on Zenodo, where the entire 13-paper Series 1 foundational introduction to QEEU, that's the lecture series that we're currently doing, and the live stream curriculum is now fully published. So it's already published up there as of yesterday and archived with DOIs. And today or tonight I'll be speaking about the manifesto for evolutionary yogic science, which I launched yesterday and uploaded to Zenodo, and I spoke about it yesterday. But I'll be talking about it tonight. I'm going to be reading through the manifesto actually for the evolutionary yogic science. So it's officially released. So it'll be a public declaration of the field and the beginning of its academic life. Over the coming weeks, I'll also be preparing the proto-canon. That's the 18 scrolls or books that I've written over the past year. So that's the proto-canon for release, and then they'll be mirrored, including the full canon, onto academia.edu as part of the next phase. So now I'm going to start. That was just the announcements. So now I'm going to start with the manifesto for evolutionary yogic science. So this manifesto marks a turning point in a journey that is unfolded across decades, continents, disciplines, and inner thresholds. What now stands under the name evolutionary yogic science did not arise from theory alone, nor from a single moment of insight, but from a long lineage of practice, observation, discipline, and lived transformation. The work that appears today is a result of many influences, teachers, traditions, companions, challenges, silences, and the unseen intelligence that guides sincere seekers towards clarity. Although one voice may be speaking this manifesto into the world now, the field itself is the culmination of countless transmissions, experiences, and evolutionary pressures that shaped its emergence. The 4 pillars that now define this discipline of evolutionary yogic science are the Kriya Yuga philosophy, Homo Lumina, which will be the subject of week 3's lecture tonight, and the ascension formula, and the QEEU canons. So there's more than one canon, there's several. So the pillars were not constructed as abstractions. They revealed themselves through lived practice, biophysical insight, developmental understanding, and the cumulative intelligence of a lifetime inside yogic, scientific, and evolutionary inquiry. This preface is not a claim of ownership, it is an acknowledgement of stewardship. To articulate a new discipline is to stand at the threshold between what has been inherited and what is now becoming possible. It requires reverence for lineage, precision of language, and the courage to speak clearly about the mechanisms and the horizons of human evolution. Evolutionary yogic science exists because the time for it has arrived. The world is ready for a framework that unites physiology and light, development and consciousness, identity and coherence, tradition and evolution. This manifesto is simply the first public declaration of that reality. To everyone who has walked alongside this unfolding in friendship, in challenge, in practice, in silence, or in witness, thank you. Your presence in ways visible and invisible help shape the clarity that now stands before you. This is the beginning of the canon. This is the beginning of the discipline. And this is only the first step of what is yet to come. The founders of evolutionary yogic science, Quantum Evolutionary Educational University, QEEU, the manifesto of evolutionary yogic science. Evolutionary yogic science emerges at a moment when the human story is ready for its next chapter. It stands on a simple truth. Human evolution is not finished, and the mechanisms of our further development can be mapped, taught, and lived. This discipline unifies four foundations: the Kriya Yuga philosophy, the cosmological ground; Homo Lumina, the evolutionary horizon; the ascension formula, the biophysical mechanism; the QEEU canons, the institutional spine. Together, they form a coherent architecture that has never existed before in the yogic or scientific world. Evolutionary yogic science is not a belief system, a reinterpretation of tradition, or a new branch of spirituality. It is a developmental and biophysical science that describes how human beings move from ordinary coherence to luminous coherence, from the familiar capacities of Homo sapiens to the emerging capacities of Homo Lumina. This manifesto marks the moment the field steps forward and speaks in its own voice. We affirm that human evolution continues through conscious participation, that physiology and light are not separate domains, that coherence is measurable, developmental, and trainable, that the subtle body is a real system with real mechanisms, that identity, emotion, and nervous system architecture are evolutionary drivers, that the next stage of human development is not mystical but structural. Evolutionary yogic science exists to map this transition with clarity, precision, and integrity. This is the beginning of the discipline. This is the beginning of the canon. And this is the beginning of the next phase of human evolution. So that's the manifesto that we launched yesterday. So I'll just take that off. Right, the next part, I'm just going to read the introduction of the Homo Lumina Thesis. So Homo Lumina is the subject of week 3. So this is a week 3 lecture, Homo Lumina Thesis. I'm only going to read the introduction. I don't want to read too much of it, and then we'll get into the actual teachings for this week. The Homo Lumina Thesis is the evolutionary centerpiece of QEEU Canon. It is the model that describes what a human being becomes when the inner mechanisms, the inner mechanics of the Kriya Yuga reach maturity. It is not a metaphor, not an ideal, and not a symbolic aspiration. It is a developmental reality. It is the next stage of human evolution expressed in biological, psychological, and energetic terms. Humanity is not at the end of its evolutionary arc. It is at the beginning of a transition. The Homo Lumina Thesis explains that transition. It describes the emergence of a new type of human being, one whose cognition, perception, emotional architecture, and energetic systems operate at a higher level of coherence. A being whose intelligence is not merely rational, but integrative, not merely emotional, but luminous, not merely instinctual, but consciously directed. This is Homo Lumina, the luminous human. The core premise of Homo Lumina Thesis. The thesis rests on a single but profound premise. When the human system becomes coherent, a higher order of intelligence emerges. This intelligence is not added from outside. It is revealed from within. It is the natural function of a fully integrated human architecture. Most people never reach this state because their system remains fragmented. Their mind is divided. Their emotions are reactive. Their energy is unstable. And their identity is shaped by inherited patterns rather than conscious direction. Homo Lumina is what emerges when the fragmentation ends. So I won't read any more of the actual thesis. We'll get into the actual talk tonight. Week 3, Homo Lumina. So in week 1, we established the architecture of QEEU. In week 2, last week, we entered the Kriya Yuga philosophy, the metaphysical foundation of this entire system. Tonight, we turn to the human being itself, not the human as biology, not the human as psychology, but the human as an evolving multidimensional organism. This lecture introduces the central evolutionary model of QEEU, Homo Lumina, the next stage of human development in the Kriya Yuga. 1. The human as an evolving system. Humanity is not static. It is not fixed. It is not the endpoint of evolution. The human being is layered, multidimensional system capable of expanded cognition, non-local perception, subtle body activation, intuitive intelligence, oversoul integration. Homo Lumina is the name we give to the human who has activated these capacities. This is not a metaphor, it is a structural shift. 2. The luminal threshold. Homo Lumina emerges when the human system crosses a threshold, a point where the subtle body becomes clear, the granthis loosen, dimensional permeability increases, the mind begins to operate holographically, the oversoul begins to participate consciously, This threshold is not mystical, it is mechanical. It is a result of inner architecture becoming functional. 3. The role of the subtle body. The subtle body is the infrastructure of Homo Lumina. It contains channels, junctions, knots, layers of perception, and dimensional interfaces. When this infrastructure is clear, the human system becomes capable of higher cognition, intuitive knowing, astral perception, causal insight, and oversoul communication. Homo Lumina is the human being with a functional subtle body architecture. 4. Dimensional knot theory and human evolution. In the updated canon, the granthis are understood as dimensional knots, binding points that restrict access to higher layers of mind. Homo Lumina emerges when these knots loosen. This loosening increases dimensional access, expands cognitive bandwidth, synchronizes intuitive and intellectual layers, reduces identity contraction, opens the system to non-local information. The evolution from Homo sapiens to Homo Lumina is the evolution from a knotted system to an unbound system. 5. The multidimensional brain. The multidimensional brain model describes how the physical brain interfaces with the astral layer, the intuitive layer, the causal layer, and the oversoul. Homo Lumina is the human whose brain has become a multi-layer interface rather than a single layer processor. This shift produces holographic memory, intuitive cognition, non-local perception, rapid pattern recognition, and the zone state. The brain becomes a receiver, not just a generator. 6. The zone state as a signature of Homo Lumina. The zone state, the state of multidimensional cognitive coherence, is not an anomaly. It is the baseline of Homo Lumina. In this state, gamma coherence increases. Hemispheric integration stabilizes. Subtle body channels open. Insights arrive fully formed. Memory feels like remembering, not thinking. This is the natural cognitive signature of an evolved human system. 7. Sadhana as the activator of the luminal state. Homo Lumina does not emerge through belief or philosophy. It emerges through practice. Sadhana activates subtle body clarity, knot release, dimensional permeability, intuitive bandwidth, oversoul alignment. This is why daily practice is essential. It is not discipline, it is not devotion, it is subtle body hygiene. Just as the physical body requires daily maintenance, the subtle body requires daily clearing. This is the foundation of Homo Lumina. 8. The evolutionary arc. Homo Lumina is part of a larger evolutionary arc. Homo sapiens, sensory cognition. Homo intuitiva, intuitive cognition. Homo Lumina, multidimensional cognition. Homo divina, oversoul integration. QEEU teaches the mechanisms that move the human system along this arc. This is not speculative, it is observable in practice and repeatable across practitioners. 9. Why Homo Lumina matters to QEEU. Homo Lumina is the central figure of the canon because it represents the human being of the Kriya Yuga, the practitioner who can access higher cognition, the individual capable of navigating dimensions, the student who can understand the multiverse architecture, the future human that QEEU is designed to educate. This is the human being who can receive, integrate, and apply the teachings of the canon. Closing. Tonight we have introduced the evolutionary model at the heart of QEEU. Homo Lumina is not a future ideal, it is the emerging human of this era. Next week, in week 4, we enter the multidimensional brain, the neurological and metaphysical interface that makes Homo Lumina possible. Thank you.